raise up. It's like they know that whoever that is, he's bad news. Uh, this scene right here is a good illustration of that.
Wall.
You take care, Hull.
Got a beef with you, Barrett. When we rode through the canyon this morning, you plumb forgot to say hello.
Told you to stay out of town a while back, too.
Then he kicked your head, must have jarred your memory.
Kick him again, maybe he'll come back.
That's right.
Why don't you tell us about your wheeler women, Barrett? Are you humping just the Grode one, or are you humping them both?
Probably both at the same time.
I mean, that little one now, she's just out of knickers, ain't she? Yeah, I bet you she's about as juicy as a freshwater clam.
What's it take to get you to fight like a man anyway?
I didn't come here to fight.
Then you shouldn't have come here at all.
You made a big mistake, Tin Pan. You know that?
Mind if I take a look at your goods?
You leave me.
Come on down off there.
You like that, Panner? Get out of there! Get out of there!
Canvas, burlap, and wood. Like to make us for good fire, right, boys? Yeah.
Shouldn't play with matches. Nothing like a nice piece of hickory.
Much obliged.
Like I said, capacity for violence. It's like, at the same time he intervenes when that guy's getting like beat to death, and it's like that's an act of benevolence, but at the same time, he immediately straight to violence. But then, boom, it's like almost a casual, I love a nice piece of hickory, you know what I mean? That kind of like benevolence and violence, the appearance and disappearance of Clint. Yeah. Like I said, it's like after she prays and he like, suddenly he's like riding through the wilderness there. And then when the bad guy kind of glances over, and he's like, he's there, and then he looks again and he's gone, and it's kind of like, well, the guy, it gives him the creeps, it gives him the heebie-jeebies. He's like, oh, where'd that dude go? I didn't even hear him move. And then next thing you know, the water, he's getting hit by the water. Natural violence, yeah, casual. Well, that capacity is what really makes him an amazing character. You see, High Plains Drifter kind of had a similar thing, where, but the character Clint played, the stranger in High Plains Drifter, he was trying to punish the town. So he had like a cruelty about him. He's protecting the town, but he was putting them, he's really torturing them to do it. And but in this case, Preacher, he's you get the feeling that he's there for a reason that only he knows. But at the same time, it's almost, he's there to protect these people, but he's also got another agenda. And, at the first, it's kind of like, well, he's protecting these people, but then there's a kind of a turn that takes place about midway through when Stockman shows up. Harsher, right. This is, like I said, this feels like the same High Plains Drifter, the same stranger from that, but it feels like he's way down the road from that. It's almost like he was brought back, by the force that brought him back from in High Plains Drifter, left him alive, because the High Plains Drifter, he kind of like rides off and then disappears. But then, she prays and boom, he rides into frame. It's almost like she summoned him. And this almost feels like the same character, but this feels like a character that's been, he's been in the world a while, and he's kind of like more accepting of his place, more accepting of his situation than the first stranger. I think I need to watch both back to back. Yeah, you need to. We're talking about Pale Rider today. Preacher from Pale Rider. Is he Clint's greatest, Eastwood's greatest Western character? Now, there's another parallel here that while I was preparing for this, there's two of my favorite movies is this one, Pale Rider, but another one of my favorite movies is The Crow. And it feels very much like The Crow in that you got the supernatural figure who, may or may not have powers, and he may or may not be human, but he's kind of like intervening in the situation. And, in The Crow, it's obvious that he's a supernatural being. But this High Plains Drifter, and this guy here, you get the feeling that High Plains, the stranger from High Plains Drifter and Preacher, you kind of like ride that edge of everything he does is technically within the realms of possibility for a human to be able to do, and yet every once in a while he'll do something that's just like right on the edge of supernatural. This trailer that came out when they did the 4K reissue has a lot of the scenes in it that kind of like illustrate this. Let me play it.
Friend of yours back?
He's our new preacher.
Hey, you messed up some of my boys, Preach.
Nothing personal.
Who but a gunfighter could have done such a thing?
Sounds like a man I once knew. Couldn't be. The man I'm thinking about is dead.
Preacher, you and your friends have 24 hours to pack up and leave.
That gold is mine.
And if you make me fight for it, I will.
Well, there's a lot of sinners hereabouts. You wouldn't want me to leave before I finish my work, would you?
You bring him to me.
It's an old score. It's time to settle it.
And behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him.
You through?
Those swatters are standing in the way of progress.
Theirs or yours? Only by standing together you're going to beat the Lahoods of the world.
We need a miracle.
The Lord certainly does work in mysterious ways.
Okay, there's a couple things that let me point out. You saw the gunman come in. That's General Stockman and his raiders. You know, they get the idea that they're Pinkertons, kind of like hired guns, and the whole thing about, you know, that sounds like somebody that I once knew, but it couldn't be him. He's dead. You know, it adds to the lore. Everything builds on everything else. You know, from him showing up out of the blue, or from him being in the mining camp, but then suddenly he's in town. You know, and the other times, or like the big guy, you know, he played Jaws. I forgot the actor's name, but you know, this guy's like 7 foot something, right? And so he breaks the rock, or at least breaks off a chunk of the rock. And everybody's like, "Oh no," you know, and then he tries to intimidate the preacher, and you see what happens. But then, right the moment after he like cracks the guy's nuts, he helps him to get back on his horse. He's like, "Put some ice on that," you know. He goes right back to benevolence, goes right back to being preacher, and then he walks over with the very same sledgehammer and boom, splits the rock like it's nothing. And it's kind of like, you know, what the heck is this guy? And it's like, you know, he does, that's technically something a human could do, but at the same time it's like human plus, and it's like the whole benevolence, but then the violence, but then at one point, it's like he turns the benevolence off. He goes into that bank, gets the safety deposit box out, and then puts his collar in, and then pulls his guns out. And at that particular moment, it's kind of like time for benevolence is over. And the rest of it's just like, you know, pretty much people were going to die, and people did. A lot of them did. Richard Kiel, exactly. Richard Kiel, exactly, the big guy. Yeah, I think he was 7'2", 7'3", something like that. He was massive man. Had a lot of physical problems because of it, but great, all intents and purposes, a gentle giant. Everybody loved Richard. But the thing about it is once he decides, okay, well, because you see, all during that time where he's being the preacher, he's giving them outs. He's telling them, you know, he's talking to them. He's kind of like trying to like head off the justice that's coming, and he's kind of like he'll beat them up, but he ain't killing anybody. But then when those Stockman's guys, and Stockman just, you know, kill that miner that wanders into town with his gold nugget, it's like that's the trigger. You know, up to that point, there was like you could step back from the edge, but after that point, give him a chance to repent, right? But after that point, it's like he's telling them, he's like, you know, let's go from, you know, let's alter from this course. You know, don't go past this point. But then um, the the robber baron that's trying to drive him out, he pulls in Stockman's people, and they kill that guy. And it's like he said to that lady, well, there's a score that needs to be settled, and it's time to settle it. And you get the idea, you get the feeling that maybe this whole entire time he's been waiting for Stockman, because when Stockman shows up, that's when he stops being preacher. That's when the collar goes in the box, and that's when the guns come out. And from that moment on, it's pretty much all she wrote. But at the same time, he's trying to get these people to kind of defend themselves. He's trying to keep them organized. He's trying to keep them from like cutting and running away from this claim, which they had a right to. And after that guy gets shot, they're like, well, they're killing us now. We better, we need to get the heck out of Dodge. But it's like, okay, at that point, the only way to answer that prayer that the girl prayed is for the threat to be ended. And at that point, there's no coming back. But so there's the whole blows up the camp with the dynamite, but then he leaves Michael Moriarty's character behind because he's a family man. Even though it's a pretty interesting relationship between Moriarty and his character and the widow lady. They're not married. He's just he was friends with her husband, and he's protecting her like he would protect his own. Is willing to die for him. There at the end, she actually proposes to him, but but he's a good guy, and so they blow up the camp, the mining camp, and then he's like, "You can't follow me. The rest of this is kind of like this is above your pay grade, So he goes into town by himself. This you got the gang that he beat up with the hickory stick. They're waiting there, and Stockman's people are waiting there, and it's time to take care of business. There's a tentativeness about Moriarty's very well done. Yeah, he's a man of peace. You saw where he didn't want to fight anybody, and they're beating the snot out of him. But there towards the end, he develops a capacity for violence, and there's like a twist at the end. I won't spoil it for you, where he actually finally flips that switch and becomes the man that's going to be capable of taking care of her and her daughter. But before that, there's something that needs to be taken care of with Stockman. Brilliant shootout at the end. I'm not going to ruin it for you and tell you more than that, but I got to kind of show you this. But ultimately, now the guy who played Stockman was actually I can't remember the name of the show, but he was an actor from the '60s. He played a sheriff or it was a marshal. He's played a marshal from the '70s. I think the name of the show was The Marshals. But so this is like that guy had kind of like taken a wrong turn somewhere. That would be Stockman. And it's like you said, there's only one person that he knew that could do what this guy was doing. He's like, but that's impossible. He's dead. Well, that's what happens when your past comes back to haunt you.
You!
Okay, couple things I need to point out. The amount of times he shot him was in the same pattern that you saw on his back earlier. And so this was tit for tat. This was justice delivered. And the fact that he reloaded that gun, but then the one he shot Stockman with was the other gun, but the one that he just loaded was the one he did the coup de grace, with, and so in other words, when he was walking towards him, he was loading the gun that he was going to use to kill him. In other words, that guy didn't have a chance. But the fact that Stockman, when he saw his eyes, knew who that was, and it's like the whole mythology of it, where you get the idea that whoever this guy was, Stockman was terrified of him. But then when he saw his face, he saw his own death. And you got like I said, you have the Undertaker hat that Clint was wearing, and he was the bringer of death. He was not there, once you reach a certain point, you've committed enough sins, justice is coming for you. And that was pretty much the whole premise of the movie. Hello from you, Beckwith Stan. Hey, good to see you. Clink, clink, right? Ack, darn, that's thanks, Rabbit. Or Bunny. But the thing that is really fascinating about I was watching reviews, and some people that reviewed it kind of missed the whole point, and they're kind of like they felt it was anticlimactic at the end because he didn't suffer, he didn't they never even laid a finger on him. But the thing about it is what in that movie made anybody think that he was anything but a force of nature? He was a complete total. This is God's swift sword coming for these guys. This was the angel of death in human form, and and there nobody human was going to defeat him, and because he wasn't there, this was a man intervening. At this point, it was God intervening, and at this juncture, and he was just like the embodiment of justice, and the whole entire thing. That I think the whole entire point of the Pale Rider movie is that it's like when the widow hit on him and kind of made a move on him and he turned her down, but the way he turned her down was not like if you watch the scene, it's not like he's like being chased or something. It's almost like that's no longer part of his existence. That kind of affection is no longer part of anything that he can do. Uh, he's no longer human, in other words. But shortly thereafter, he hops on his horse and he rides out and right back into the wilderness from which he came, very much like a High Plains drifter, and which kind of backs up my theory that this was the stranger from High Plains Drifter. Preacher is the same guy. That he was brought back to bring justice to those who murdered the man, but at the same time, he's an instrument in the hands of God. The death angel sent for the firstborn of Egypt. There is the Bible talks about a death angel, and when the death angel gets sent, the bodies hit the floor. Okay, people are going to die. But at this point, it's like up to a point he was giving them that last moment to repent, giving them that last chance. Stockman, there was no grace for Stockman. You get the feeling that Stockman there's a lot of bodies. He buried a lot of people, and for the highest bidder. And so, in Stockman's case, there was never going to be any chance for redemption in his case, and he was beyond that. And so, what you saw was justice being meted out. And when it comes to is he heroic? I mean, he protects people, and it gives them hope, and he like prevents the bad guys from, he basically ends the threat. But is he heroic? I don't know that he is heroic. I don't think that that's what he is in this movie. I think the people are heroic, but he's kind of like, he's kind of like a protection on them. He's kind of like, I guess a device in the hands of God, to answer that prayer that she prayed. No more, no less. And so when he's fulfilled, his duty, he rides back off into the limbo from which he came. And so, i.e., there's possibility that he could, return someday if the situation calls for it. But But this mythos of a avenging supernatural being is all throughout literature, all throughout lore. The crow is a very good example of that, and the idea that justice is coming for the evil. Justice is coming for the people who have, done wrong in the world. I think that desire for justice, um, like Gary Planchet, in the airport in Baton Rouge, popping the guy in the head from the bank of phones that molested and kidnapped his son. We all were. I don't think there's a person on the planet that thought that he should be put in jail for that. And we're seeing that. But justice is something that we all desire. We all desire for bad people to be punished. And we don't see that a lot these days, where people don't feel like they're being punished anymore. You see people that are out on the streets with 50 arrests and gets a slap on the wrist, and they go right back out and hurt people. And something like this, something like a Pale Rider, is I guess it's kind of like ability. Gives you like a escapism in a way. Get away from this world where justice isn't always meted out, at least on this side of the veil. And so, whether he's a hero, is he an actual person? Is he an actual entity? I can't really know. I can't really, I don't really know if this is actually an independent thinking being at this point, if he's just the living embodiment of justice. He seems to show affection towards people. He seems to show compassion towards people. But then at the same time, the violence is right there. Like there's no ramp up. There's no like, okay, well, you pushed me too far. There's none of that. There's kindness for these people, compassion for these people, immediate violence for anybody else. And there's no ramp up. There's no build to it. It's just there. And so I really, honestly, I think, in my opinion, I think Preacher is one of the best creations of Eastwood, Western wise. And I really honestly think that High Plains Drifter Stranger is the same guy as Preacher. And I think that there's a lot of indication of that. Now, the guys that killed the High Plains Drifter Stranger were different from Stockman. And so there's that. And so that kind of breaks my theory a little bit. But, then again, it's my own personal lore, and I choose to believe it. So whether you want to believe it or not, that's fine. But anyway, that's why Pale Rider is one of my favorite Westerns to rewatch. I find something new in it every time I do. And just preparing for this, the whole thing with the Undertaker's hat, I didn't even realize that before. Why did they choose that particular top hat? It's not really something that you see on cowboys, but it's because he wasn't a cowboy. He was the Undertaker. And what's the movie? he certainly did a lot of that. But anyway, so that's a walk down memory lane. That's a I've just been thinking about the Pale Rider. The movie, I think, is free on YouTube if you haven't watched it recently. I think it's still got a 4K adaptation that you can get a hold of. I know it's on Roku streaming. So, if you get a chance to watch both High Plains Drifter and Pale Rider back to back, the movies really work well together. And so, check it out. I'm sure you'll have fun with it. But anyway, that's been Cooper for Telepathic Bunny Comics. Y'all have a very good day, and I'll talk to you next time. Follow White Rabbit.